The billionaire's engagement party, a ghost from the past, and three shocking faces hook. The opulent ballroom of the Crystal Palace Hotel glittered under 1,000,000 lights, packed with New York's elite, celebrating the engagement of tech mogul Richard Sterling to socialite Sophia Davis. It was a perfect union, strategic and powerful. But then, a quiet figure entered the banquet kitchen, clad in a chef's uniform. Richard froze, his eyes widening. 15 years vanished. It was Isabella Thorne, the woman he'd never forgotten. And then, he saw them. 3 children working by her side, with eyes startlingly, unnervingly familiar. The world was about to tilt on its axis, and what Richard did next would leave everyone speechless. If you believe in second chances, hit that like button right now. And if you're new here, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single twist in this dramatic tale. Leave a comment below. What do you think is going through Richard's mind right now? A glimpse of the past. Richard, are you okay? Sophia Davis adjusted her designer gown, her eyes following her fiancé's lost gaze. You look strange. Richard Sterling couldn't tear his eyes away from the woman who had just entered the kitchen of the Crystal Palace Hotel. After 15 years, Isabella Clarke was still the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. His heart stopped when their gazes crossed for a second, before she disappeared among the catering staff. Sorry, darling, I'm just nervous about the party, he lied, loosening his tie. The room was filled with the elite of New York City, entrepreneurs, politicians, socialites, all celebrating his engagement to Senator Davis's daughter. A perfect union on paper, strategic for both families. But now, none of that mattered. Mr. Sterling, the event coordinator approached. Could you review the menu with the chef? There are some last-minute details. Richard's stomach clenched. Of course. He walked towards the kitchen with hesitant steps. The noise of preparations enveloped him, but his attention was fixed on the elegant figure who directed her team with military precision. Isabella wore her impeccably white chef's uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a perfect bun. At her side worked 3 young people. Chef Clarke, the coordinator called. Mr. Sterling would like to review. Isabella slowly turned. Her brown eyes met Richard's blue ones, and for a moment, the world stopped. 15 years vanished in an instant. Mr. Sterling, she said, her voice controlled, though he noticed the slight tremor. It's an honor to have the opportunity to cook for your celebration. The honor is mine, Chef Clarke, he replied, struggling to maintain his composure. I've heard wonderful things about your work. The 2 young people working next to Isabella observed them with curiosity. They were obviously twins, about 14 years old. The boy had light brown hair and blue eyes that were eerily familiar. The girl possessed Isabella's delicate features, but with the same intensity in her gaze. Allow me to introduce my assistants, Isabella said, her voice barely audible. Daniel and Chloe, my children, and Ethan, she pointed to a smaller boy who was organizing utensils. Also my son. Pleased to meet you. Daniel extended his hand confidently. Mom says you have a tech company. I'm learning programming. The boy's hand was firm, his smile genuine. Richard felt a strange connection, as if he were seeing a reflection of himself at that age. Really? What languages are you studying? Python and JavaScript mainly. I love creating applications. Chloe approached shyly. I like cooking more. Mom is teaching me French techniques. Chloe has a natural talent, Isabella interjected, her maternal pride evident. She already creates her own recipes. Richard studied the twins' faces. Something in their features gave him a disturbing sense of déjà vu. Daniel, especially. Richard? Sophia appeared at the kitchen entrance, clearly annoyed. I was looking for you. The guests are asking for you. Coming, darling. He apologized, but didn't move. Sophia assessed the scene with calculating eyes. She noticed the tension between Richard and Isabella, the way he looked at the children. "Is everything in order with the menu?" she asked with false sweetness. "Of course, ma'am," Isabella replied professionally. "Everything will be perfect for the celebration." "Excellent. Richard, let's go. Our guests are waiting." Before leaving, Richard addressed Isabella once more. "If you need anything at all, don't hesitate to ask." Their eyes met again, and in that gaze were years of unanswered questions, of shared pain, of a love that never completely extinguished, a sinking feeling, and a sudden truth. When they returned to the main ballroom, Sophia possessively clung to his arm. "Do you know that chef? Why do you ask? The way you were looking at her. And those children, especially the older boy. He looks like you in a strange way." Richard felt his blood run cold, but maintained his composure. "Don't be ridiculous, Sophia. She's just the chef." But as he pretended to attend to the guests, his mind worked feverishly. The calculations were simple and terrible. 15 years since his breakup with Isabella. The twins appeared to be 14 years old. In the kitchen, Isabella struggled to concentrate on work while feeling Richard's gaze burning her skin. Daniel and Chloe noticed her nervousness. "Are you okay, Mom?" Chloe asked, worried. "Yes, my love. It's just an important night. We need everything to be perfect." But nothing was right. Seeing Richard after so many years, seeing how he looked at Daniel, it was as if the past had returned to exact its revenge. Her phone vibrated. It was her mother. "Hello?" "Isabella, my dear. How are things there?" "Good, Mom. Everything under control." "And the children?" Daniel mentioned it was a very elegant event. "They're helping. Daniel and Chloe are behaving wonderfully." Richard, who was passing near the kitchen at that moment, stopped when he heard fragments of the conversation. 14 years already. I can't believe how much the twins have grown. Daniel looks more and more like, well, you know. I never thought I'd see him again. The phone slipped from Isabella's hands when she saw Richard standing at the entrance, his face pale, his eyes wide. He had heard enough. 14 years. The twins. Daniel looks more and more like... The truth hit him like a lightning bolt. Those were her children. His children. Isabella picked up the phone with trembling hands. "Mom, I'll call you back." She straightened up to face Richard, but when she looked up, he was no longer there. Richard didn't sleep all night. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Daniel's face, his own blue eyes reflected in the boy. At 6 in the morning, he was already dressed and in his car. Driving through the city's empty streets, finding the Heartfelt Flavors Bistro was not difficult. It was in a middle-class neighborhood, on a quiet street full of small shops. The place was modest but cozy, with large windows that showed the warm, familiar interior. Isabella was inside, preparing dough for the day's bread. She looked different without the chef's uniform, more relaxed in jeans and a simple blouse. When she saw him through the glass, she froze. Richard entered without knocking. The doorbell announced his arrival. "Are they mine?" he asked directly, without greetings or preambles. Isabella put down the dough and wiped her hands on her apron. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie to me, Isabella. I heard you last night. 14 years. The twins. Daniel looks more and more like... Like whom, Isabella? Who does Daniel look like?" She looked at him with a mixture of defiance and pain. "After 15 years, you come here to ask me questions?" "They're my children," he shouted, losing his composure. "Why didn't you tell me?" "For what?" Isabella also raised her voice. "So your family would threaten them like they threatened me? So you would reject them like you rejected me? I never rejected you. My family forced me." Your family. Always your family. Isabella laughed bitterly. Do you know what your lawyers told me when I found out I was pregnant? That if I ever looked for you or tried to contact you, they would destroy my family. That they would send my father to jail for invented debts. That they would take our house. Richard felt as if he had been punched in the stomach. You were pregnant when we broke up? I was 6 weeks along. I found out 2 days after you told me it was over, that your family would never accept a woman like me. Tears streamed down Isabella's cheeks, but her voice remained firm. So I made a decision. My children were not going to grow up rejected by a family who would see them as a mistake. They were not going to live as the Millionaire's bastards. Isabella. I worked 3 jobs while studying gastronomy at night. Daniel and Chloe accompanied me to classes when there was no one to leave them with. I built all this alone. She pointed around the restaurant. And when Ethan's parents died 3 years ago, I adopted him too because that's what real family does. It takes care of each other. Richard approached slowly. Where are they now? At school, like all normal children. I want to meet them. I want to be part of their lives. And your engagement? Your perfect millionaire life? None of that matters. They're my children, Isabella. She studied him for a long moment. How do I know you won't disappear again when your family finds out? Because I'm not the same man I was 15 years ago. Isabella sat at one of the restaurant tables. She looked tired, as if she had been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders for too long. Daniel wants to study systems engineering. He's brilliant, just like you were. Chloe dreams of being a chef, but she also loves chemistry. Ethan is our ray of sunshine. He always finds a way to make us laugh when things get tough. Do they know their father is a millionaire who abandoned them before they were born? No. I told them their dad died in an accident when they were babies. The revelation hit him like a slap. You told them I was dead? It was easier than explaining the truth, that their father chose his money and his family over them. At that moment, the restaurant door opened, and an elegant woman with dark glasses entered. Sophia had followed Richard. So here you were, she said with a cold voice. We need to talk, darling. Isabella stood up immediately. I think it would be better if you left. On the contrary, Sophia took off her glasses and evaluated the place with disdain. I think we all need to clarify some things. She turned directly to Isabella. How much do you want? Excuse me? For disappearing from our lives, for not ruining the wedding. How much? Isabella looked at Richard with contempt. I see you're still the same coward as always. You send your woman to do your dirty work. I didn't send her. $5 million, Sophia interrupted. So you take your children far away from here and never bother Richard again. The silence that followed was deafening. Isabella slowly approached Sophia until they were face to face. Madam, you can have all the money in the world, but there are things that cannot be bought. Dignity is one of them. So take your $5 million and get out of my restaurant. Sophia smiled cruelly. You don't know who you're dealing with. My family has power in this country. And I have something you will never have. Isabella opened the door. The respect of my children and the satisfaction of having earned every penny I have. After Sophia left, furious and threatening, Richard was left alone with Isabella. This is not going to end here, she said, picking up the plates from the table. Your fiancé will do everything possible to destroy me. I'll protect her. I'll protect all of you. Isabella stopped and looked at him sadly. How did you protect me 15 years ago? He had no answer for that. But when he saw a photo on the restaurant wall, Isabella with Daniel, Chloe, and Ethan on opening day, all smiling proudly, he knew he couldn't lose this second chance. Give me a chance to meet them, he pleaded. Just that. A chance to be the father I should have been. Isabella sighed, seeing the determination in his eyes. They come here after school. If you want to meet your children, You better be sure of what you want, because if you hurt them, if you abandon them again, there will be no third chance." Richard nodded, feeling for the first time in years that he had a real purpose in life. What do you think of Sophia's actions? And will Richard truly change? Tell us in the comments. A father's true purpose. During the next 2 weeks, Richard became a regular visitor to the restaurant. He arrived in the afternoons when Daniel, Chloe, and Ethan returned from school and stayed until closing. At first, the children looked at him with curiosity and some shyness. But little by little, especially Daniel, they began to open up to him. "You really have a tech company?" Daniel asked one afternoon while helping to clean the tables. "I have several," Richard replied, sitting next to him. "But the one I like the most is the one that develops educational applications." Daniel's eyes lit up. "That's great. I made an app for my mom to manage the restaurant's inventory better." "Really? Show me." Isabella watched from the kitchen as Daniel proudly showed his project to Richard. The way her son perked up, how he gestured just like his father when talking about technology, was both unsettling and beautiful. Chloe was more reserved. But when she discovered that Richard knew about wines and pairings from his many business dinners, she began to ask him questions about international culinary techniques. "Mom says I'm going to study in Paris someday," Chloe told him while preparing a vinaigrette. "I want to learn from the best chefs in the world." "Paris is beautiful," Richard said. "I lived there for 6 months when we opened the European office. The markets of La Boqueria are incredible for getting fresh ingredients." "Would you tell me more about Paris?" she asked shyly. Ethan, for his part, had immediately grown fond of Richard. At 8 years old, he didn't have the emotional barriers of his older siblings. "Why don't you have children?" he asked one day, with the brutal honesty of children. Richard felt a lump in his throat. "Who says I don't?" "Well, you never bring them. And Mom says families should be together." Isabella quickly intervened. "Ethan, go do your homework." But the damage was done. Richard excused himself and went out for some air. Isabella followed him to the small backyard of the restaurant. "I'm sorry. He shouldn't have asked that." "No, it's okay. You're right. Families should be together." He looked at her directly. "Why haven't you told them the truth?" "Because I don't know if you're going to stay." Isabella crossed her arms. "They already lost Ethan's parents. I don't want them to go through another abandonment." At that moment, Daniel appeared at the door. "Is everything okay?" "Yes, my love," Isabella replied. "We were just talking about work." Daniel approached Richard. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure." "Why do you come to the restaurant so much? It's not that it bothers me. I like you a lot, but Mom has never had a friend like you." Richard looked at Isabella, silently asking for permission. She shook her head, almost imperceptibly. "I like coming here. It's a special place. Your mom cooks incredibly, and you all remind me that there are more important things than work." Daniel smiled. "Mom always says that family is the most important thing." That night, after the children went home with Isabella, Richard stayed at the restaurant, helping to close. It was something he had started doing naturally, as if it were part of the family routine. "Daniel adores you," Isabella commented while counting the cash register. "He can't stop talking about you at home. He's an incredible boy. All 3 of them are." "Yes, they are." Isabella paused. "Richard, what's going on with your engagement? Sophia hasn't been back around here, but she's investigating you. Investigating us. It doesn't matter anymore." "What do you mean it doesn't matter? You're going to marry her." Richard stopped cleaning the table and looked at her intently. "Would you marry someone after finding the family you always wanted?" Isabella's heart raced, but she maintained her composure. "Don't say things you don't mean. How do you know what I feel?" "Because I know you, Richard. You've always known how to say what people want to hear." He approached slowly. "Then listen to this. These have been the best days of my life in 15 years. Seeing Daniel program reminds me why I fell in love with technology. Hearing Chloe talk about her dreams makes me want to be a better person. And Ethan makes me want to protect something pure in this world. Isabella felt tears in her eyes, but held them back. And when your family finds out about us, what's going to happen? I don't know, but I know I can't keep living a lie. Before she could answer, her phone rang. It was Daniel. Mom, is Richard still there? Yes, my love. Why? I was just thinking. Do you think he'd like to come over for dinner tomorrow? I made a new program, and I want to show it to him. Isabella looked at Richard, who had heard the conversation. Tell him yes, he whispered. All right, Daniel, invite him yourself. Daniel took his mother's phone. Richard, do you want to come to dinner tomorrow? Chloe's going to cook her famous chicken empanadas. I'd love to, Richard replied, feeling a warmth he hadn't experienced in years. When they hung up, Isabella looked at him with a mixture of hope and fear. Tomorrow will be the first time you come to our house. Are you sure about this? More sure than anything in my life. But neither of them knew that at that moment, from a car parked across the street, someone was photographing them through the restaurant window. Sophia had hired a private investigator, and the evidence was accumulating. The storm was about to begin, but for that night, Richard allowed himself to imagine what it would be like to be part of a real family, where love wasn't measured in bank accounts, but in shared laughter and homemade dinners. The dinner the next day was going to change everything, but they didn't know it yet. The betrayal and the ultimate choice. The dinner at Isabella's house had been perfect. A small 3-bedroom apartment, full of family photos, and children's drawings on the refrigerator. Richard felt more at home there than in his luxurious penthouse. Daniel had proudly shown him his new app for organizing study schedules. Chloe had prepared a mole that rivaled the best restaurants in the city, and Ethan had insisted that Richard help him with a 1,000-piece puzzle. For the first time in years, Richard had experienced what it meant to be part of a real family. But now, 2 days later, he was sitting in his office looking at the photographs a private investigator had placed on his desk. Him leaving Isabella's restaurant, him carrying Ethan on his shoulders in the park, him and Isabella laughing together as they closed the restaurant. How long were you planning to keep this a secret? Richard looked up. Sophia was standing at his office door, impeccably dressed, and with a chilling smile. Sophia, can we talk about this? Talk? She closed the door and approached slowly. About how my fiancé is playing house with his ex-girlfriend and her bastards. Don't call them that. Why not? That's what they are, aren't they? She placed the photos on the desk. Let me guess. They're yours, aren't they? The twins. They have the same arrogant look as you. Richard stood up. This is over, Sophia. The engagement, the wedding, everything. She laughed bitterly. Do you really think it's going to be that easy? My family has already spent a fortune on this wedding. Our families have already signed business agreements based on our union. I'll return every penny spent. It's not about money, darling. It's about reputation, about power. Sophia moved closer. If you cancel this wedding publicly, I'll make sure to sink your beloved chef and her children. What do you mean? My father has contacts in immigration, in social services, in the media. I can have her restaurant shut down for imaginary sanitary violations. I can have her finances investigated, have her ability to have custody of those children questioned. Richard's blood ran cold. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Her eyes gleamed with malice. Unless what? Unless you end all this now. Unless you never see that woman or those children again. Unless we go ahead with the wedding as if nothing happened. At that moment, the office door opened without warning. Benjamin Carter, his business partner and best friend from college, entered with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Sorry to interrupt, but we need to talk about the merger contracts. Richard frowned. What contracts? We don't have any merger scheduled. Benjamin and Sophia exchanged a look that did not go unnoticed. The contracts you signed last week, Benjamin said slowly. Don't you remember? I didn't sign anything. Of course you did. Sophia pulled some documents from her bag. Here they are, with your signature. Stock transfers, investment agreements. Richard took the papers and quickly reviewed them. His signature was there, but he had never seen those documents. These are fake. Fake? Benjamin approached. Come on, Richard. I know you've been distracted lately, but... Then, Richard understood everything. The way Benjamin had insisted on being a witness to his signatures lately. The times Sophia had been in his office without warning. The documents that supposedly needed his urgent authorization. You two. He looked at them in disbelief. Since when? Sophia sighed dramatically. Does it really matter? What matters is that now we have control over 40% of your companies. And if you don't cooperate, Benjamin added, we can make it very difficult for you to maintain control of the rest. Not only that. Sophia smiled cruelly. I also have this. She pulled out her phone and showed them a photograph. It was herself, obviously pregnant, with a date 2 weeks prior. You're pregnant? Richard asked, confused. I was, she replied. But the baby wasn't yours. Benjamin placed a protective hand on Sophia's shoulder. It was mine. Sophia lost the baby last week, but we have all the medical documentation that proves the pregnancy. And what does that have to do with me? Very simple, Sophia said. If you don't go ahead with the wedding, we'll tell everyone that you abandoned me while I was pregnant, that you cheated on me with that chef while I was expecting your child. The media will love the story. Richard sank heavily into his chair. All this? The relationship, the engagement, everything was a lie? Not all of it, Sophia said with false sweetness. I did plan to marry you. The money and connections would have been enough. But then you showed up with your romantic feelings and your ideas of true love. Since when, you two? For a year now, Benjamin admitted. Sophia came to me when she realized you were never going to love her the way she wanted. And I always thought you had too much of everything. Silence filled the office. Richard processed the betrayal, the manipulation, years of lies. What exactly do you want? You to go ahead with the wedding, Sophia said. You to keep up appearances for a year or two. Then we can divorce discreetly and divide the assets. And if I refuse? Your reputation is destroyed. Your company crumbles. And that chef and her children, well, let's just say life is going to get very difficult for them. Richard looked at them for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a number. What are you doing? Benjamin asked nervously. Calling my lawyer, Richard said. And then a forensic accountant. And then a private investigator. It's over. He interrupted them, standing up. I don't know what you two are going to do, but I'm not going to keep living this lie. Sophia and Benjamin exchanged panicked glances. If you do this, Sophia threatened, I'll destroy Isabella Clark and her children. I promise you. Richard looked at her with a coldness she had never seen before. Try it. But I assure you that if you touch my family, you're going to find out what I'm capable of when I truly fight for something I love. When they left his office, Richard was left alone, surrounded by the shattered pieces of his former life. But for the first time in years, he felt free. Now he had to protect Isabella and the children. The war had begun. This is getting intense. What do you think of Richard's defiant stance? Will he succeed in protecting his newfound family? Hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts in the comments. The reckoning and a final farewell. Isabella knew something was wrong the moment Richard entered the restaurant. His face was pale, and he had deep dark circles under his eyes, as if he hadn't slept in days. What happened? She asked immediately, stopping her dough preparation. Richard looked around. Daniel was at a table doing homework. Chloe was helping in the kitchen, and Ethan was playing with some blocks in a corner. We need to talk, alone. Isabella felt a knot in her stomach. Kids, can you go to the backyard for a moment? Take the board games. When they were alone, Richard told her everything. Sophia and Benjamin's betrayal, the threats, the falsified documents. Isabella listened in silence, her face hardening with each word. So it was true, she finally said. You haven't changed at all. What are you talking about? You're still the same man who puts his world of money and power before everything else. How long were you planning to keep this a secret? Isabella, you don't understand. I broke up with Sophia. I canceled the wedding. And the children? Don't you think they'll get hurt when this explodes in the media? When everyone finds out they're the Millionaire's secret children? Richard approached her. I'm going to protect them. I'm going to protect you. Like you protected me 15 years ago. Before he could answer, Isabella's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. Hello? Ms. Isabella Clark? Yes, who's calling? This is the Department of Social Services. We've received an anonymous complaint about the living conditions of the minors in your care. We need to schedule an inspection visit. Isabella felt the floor move beneath her feet. A complaint? Of what kind? Alleged child abandonment and child labor exploitation. Children working in the restaurant outside school hours. That's ridiculous. My children only help me occasionally. Never. The visit is scheduled for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Good day. Isabella hung up with trembling hands. Richard had heard part of the conversation. It's already started, she whispered. They've started carrying out their threats. At that moment, Daniel returned from the backyard. Mom, there are some people outside taking pictures of the restaurant. Are they journalists? Isabella looked out the window. Indeed, there were 2 men with cameras across the street. Enough, she said, making a decision she had been postponing. Kids, come here. Daniel, Chloe, and Ethan approached, noticing the tension in the air. What's wrong, Mom? Chloe asked, worried. Isabella took a deep breath and looked at Richard. He nodded, understanding what she was about to do. There's something you need to know. Something I should have told you a long time ago. She took Daniel and Chloe's hands. Richard isn't just a friend. He is your dad. He is. The silence that followed was deafening. Daniel was the first to react. What? He pulled away from his mother's hand. Our dad? The one who died in the accident? He didn't die, Daniel. I lied to you. Chloe turned pale. Why? Why did you lie to us? Because it was easier than explaining that he had another life, another family. Liar! Daniel shouted with tears in his eyes. You lied to me my whole life! He ran towards the door. I don't want to hear any more lies. Chloe followed him, also crying. I hate you both. Only Ethan stayed, confused, but calm. Richard is Daniel and Chloe's dad? Yes, my love. Isabella knelt down to his height, tears streaming down her face. And will he be my dad too? If you want him to, yes. Ethan hugged Isabella tightly. I do want him to. Richard is a good person. Richard approached and put a hand on the boy's shoulder. And you're going to be my son, Ethan, in everything that matters. But the joy of the moment was interrupted when Isabella saw more photographers arriving at the scene. It's over, she said, standing up. We're going to be the show of the day. The children are going to be chased, pointed at in school. Isabella. No, Richard. This is exactly what I was afraid of. She began collecting things from the kitchen. I can't expose my children to this. What are you doing? What I should have done from the beginning. We're leaving. Where? To Los Angeles, with my sister. We can start over there, away from all this circus. Richard took her arm. Don't run away again. I'm not running. I'm protecting my children." She broke free. "Like you never knew how to do. This time it's going to be different. I'll fight for you." Isabella looked at him with a mixture of pain and despair. "With what money? With what power? You just told me your partner and your ex-fiancé stole half your company. I have enough to pay lawyers, while they destroy my reputation and try to take my children away from me. No, Richard, I'm not going to risk the only thing that really matters." At that moment, Danielle returned, calmer, but with red eyes. "Mom, there are more people outside, and I heard some men asking our neighbor about us." Isabella made her final decision. "Go pack, only the essentials. We're leaving tonight." "Forever?" Ethan asked. "I don't know, my love. But for now, yes." Richard stood in the middle of the restaurant, watching the family he had just found crumble again before his eyes. "Isabella, give me a week. Just 1 week to fix this." She stopped at the kitchen door. "You had 15 years, Richard. The children and I can't wait any longer." When they went upstairs to pack, Richard was left alone. He looked around the restaurant, filled with memories of the past few weeks. Ethan's drawings taped to the wall, the corner where Daniel had programmed, the table where Chloe had taught him to distinguish spices. Everything was fading again. But this time, he wasn't going to sit idly by. He picked up his phone and started making calls. To his lawyers, to private investigators, to media contacts. If Sophia and Benjamin wanted war, they were going to get it. But when he went upstairs to say goodbye, he found they had already left. Only a note remained on the kitchen table. "Richard, take care of the restaurant until we decide what to do with it. The children need time to understand all this. Please don't look for us, Isabella." For the second time in his life, he had lost the woman he loved and his children. But this time, not because of family pressure, but because of his own choices. The difference was that now he knew exactly what was worth fighting for. This is such a heartbreaking turn of events. Will Richard manage to win back his family? And what will he do to Sophia and Benjamin? Hit that subscribe button and let us know your predictions in the comments. A new beginning, a lingering hope. 6 months later, Isabella was drying her hands on her apron while reviewing the evening's reservations. Her new restaurant in Los Angeles, also called Heartfelt Flavors Bistro, had been more successful than she expected. The homemade food and family atmosphere had quickly won over the Angelinos. "Mom, I finished my homework," Chloe announced, putting her books in her backpack. "Can I help you with tonight's special dinner?" "Of course, my love. And Daniel?" "He's in his room, programming again." Isabella sighed. Daniel had had more trouble adapting to the change. Although he wasn't as angry as in the first few months, he was still reserved when they talked about his father. Chloe had processed the revelations better, but sometimes Isabella caught her looking out the window with a melancholic expression. Ethan, on the contrary, had flourished in Los Angeles. He had new friends at school and had started playing soccer on a local team. "Mom?" Ethan appeared in the kitchen in his soccer uniform. "Can I invite my friends to dinner after practice?" "Of course, but let their moms know." Isabella had managed to stabilize their lives again, but she couldn't deny that something was missing. The nights were the most difficult when she closed the restaurant and was left alone with her thoughts. Richard appeared in her dreams frequently, and during the day, she found herself expecting to see him walk through the door, as he used to do in New York. "Mommy?" Ethan approached her while she prepared vegetables. "Do you think Richard is looking for us?" It was the question everyone avoided asking, but that constantly floated in the air. "I don't know, my love. Why do you ask?" "Because last night I dreamed about him. He was teaching me how to use his computer again." Isabella knelt down to Ethan's height. "Do you miss him?" "Yes, he was fun. And I liked how you looked when he was here." "How did I look?" "Happy, like when you make your favorite dish, or when you see us all laughing together." Before Isabella could answer, Daniel appeared in the kitchen with his laptop. Mom, can you check something? He had become more communicative in recent weeks, especially when it came to his tech projects. What is it? I was researching Dad, his company, what happened after we left. Isabella felt a knot in her stomach. Daniel, don't. I just wanted to understand. Look at this. Daniel showed her several online newspaper articles. The first pages showed the scandal. Millionaire cancels $1 million wedding. Entrepreneur sues former partners for fraud. The fall of a tech empire. But there were more recent articles that Isabella hadn't seen. Richard had sold his main company and used the money to create an educational foundation. He had opened tech centers in low-income communities throughout the U.S. See this one? Daniel pointed to a recent article. He opened a programming center here in Los Angeles 3 months ago. It's only 20 minutes from here. Isabella's heart raced. He's here in Los Angeles? According to this, yes. And look at this other one. Daniel changed the page. He won the lawsuit against Sophia and her partner. He sued them for fraud and forgery. They're in jail. Chloe also approached, curious about the conversation. What's happening? Daniel quickly explained his discoveries to her. Chloe carefully reviewed the articles. It says he donates almost all his money to educational programs. Why would he do that? Maybe because he really changed, Isabella murmured, more to herself than to her children. At that moment, Ethan, who had been looking at the photos on the laptop, pointed at the screen excitedly. Look, that's the man who sometimes comes to the park. Isabella quickly approached. In one of the article photos, Richard appeared inaugurating the tech center. He looked different, thinner, less formal, with a genuine smile as he taught a group of children. What man, Ethan? When I go play soccer on Saturdays, sometimes there's a man who watches the practices from afar. I thought he was some kid's dad on the team, but it's him. It's Richard. Isabella felt the world move beneath her feet. Richard had been in Los Angeles for months, near them, but without approaching. Are you sure it's him? Yes. He even waved at me once when my ball rolled near where he was sitting. Daniel slowly closed the laptop. Why hasn't he come looking for us if he's here? Isabella had no answer for that. Respect for her decision to stay away? Fear of rejection? Or had he really found a new life without them? Mom, Chloe said softly, do you think we could, I don't know, go see him? Just to talk. I don't know if that's a good idea. Please, Daniel insisted. I just want to ask him some things, like why he left all that world of money, and why he's here but hasn't come to see us. Isabella looked at the hopeful faces of her children. For 6 months she had tried to protect them from pain, but maybe she had also denied them the possibility of healing. All right, she finally said, but we all go together, and if he doesn't want to see us, we respect that, and we leave. Agreed? The 3 children nodded excitedly. When? Ethan asked. Isabella looked at the clock. It was 4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon. Now, let's go now, before I lose my nerve. As they prepared to leave, Isabella wondered if she was making the right decision. They had built a stable life in Los Angeles, without complications, without pain. But seeing the hope in her children's eyes, she realized that perhaps it was time to take a risk again. Perhaps it was time to find out if Richard had really changed, or if he was just pretending to be a different person. In 20 minutes, they would have the answers. The Tech Center, a heartfelt reunion. The Hope Codes Community Tech Center was located in a humble area of Los Angeles, very different from the elegant corporate buildings Isabella remembered from Richard's previous life. It was a modest building, painted in bright colors, with a handmade sign that read, "Here, everyone can learn." Isabella parked the car, and the 4 of them sat for a moment, observing the place through the windows. Are you sure you want to do this, Mom? Chloe asked, noticing her mother's nervousness. I'm not sure about anything, Isabella admitted. But you have the right to know who your dad really is now. Through the center's windows, they could see Richard sitting on the floor, surrounded by children aged 8 to 12. He wore jeans and a simple t-shirt, nothing like the elegant suits he used to wear. He was helping a child connect wires to a computer made of recycled parts. And when you connect this wire here, the current can flow and turn on the LED, see? It's like giving electricity a path to go where it needs to go. The child smiled excitedly when the small light came on. It worked! I'm a scientist! You're much more than that, Richard told her with a genuine smile. You're an inventor. It was then that he looked up and saw them. Time stopped completely. The expression of surprise on his face slowly transformed into something Isabella couldn't decipher. Joy, fear, hope, all mixed together. Daniel, Chloe, Ethan. He slowly stood up. Isabella. The children remained motionless, as if they didn't know what to do with this moment they had anticipated for weeks. Richard. It was Ethan who broke the silence, running towards him. I knew it was you from the park. Richard knelt to receive Ethan's hug, tears in his eyes. Hello, champ. How's the most talented soccer player in Los Angeles? I scored 3 goals last week. Why didn't you come see me play if you were there? The direct question from Ethan made everyone tense. Richard looked at Isabella over the boy's head. Why? Because I wanted to be sure it was the right thing to do. Your mom said you needed time. Daniel approached cautiously. Is what we read true? That you sold your company and that Sophia is in jail? It's true. You investigated me? Daniel is very good at investigating. Chloe also approached. He found all the articles about what happened after we left. Richard straightened up, keeping Ethan close. And what do you think of what you read? That maybe we were wrong to judge you so quickly, Daniel admitted. But also that we don't understand why you're here and hadn't come to look for us. Isabella finally spoke. Could we talk? Privately? Richard asked one of his volunteers to take over the workshop and led them to a small office at the back of the center. It was simple, but functional, with children's drawings on the walls and an old coffee maker in a corner. How long have you been here? Isabella asked. 4 months. We opened the center 3 months ago. And why not? Because I respect your decision, he interrupted her. You said you needed time and space. I didn't want to pressure you, especially after all the damage I had already caused. Chloe spoke shyly. But you saw us in the park. Richard smiled sadly. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. To see that Ethan was happy, that you were adapting. I never planned to approach. Then why did you come to Los Angeles? Daniel asked, with the directness he had inherited from his father. Because after you left, I realized that my whole life had been a lie. The money, the power, the connections, none of that really mattered to me. The only thing I wanted was to be the man you deserved as a father. He sat on the edge of the desk, looking at his children. So I sold everything. I paid the lawsuits and decided to start over, to do something that was truly worthwhile. And is this worthwhile? Isabella asked, gesturing around. More than I imagined. These children have taught me more about real life in 4 months than I learned in 35 years. Ethan had been silent, but suddenly he spoke. Are you going to leave again? The question dropped like a bomb in the small office. Richard knelt in front of Ethan. No, if you don't want me to leave. I don't want you to, Ethan said immediately. Daniel and Chloe exchanged glances. We need time to think about it, Daniel finally said, to understand all this. Of course, Isabella had been observing the entire interaction in silence. This Richard was different, not just in his clothes or the place he worked, but in something deeper. The way he spoke, how he looked at the children, his patience, "What do you propose?" she asked him. "That you give me a chance to show you that I can be the father I should have been from the beginning, without pressure, without grand promises. Just be present." Chloe approached and hugged him suddenly, taking everyone by surprise. "I missed you," she whispered against his shoulder. Daniel took a little longer, but finally he also came closer. "I missed you too. But if you hurt us again, I won't," Richard promised. "This time, you're going to have to kick me out for me to leave." A family rebuilt, a future shared. During the following weeks, they slowly began to rebuild their family relationship. Richard visited the restaurant after work. He helped with the children's homework, and little by little, he integrated into their daily routine. Saturdays became their special day. He took Daniel to explore new programming projects. He cooked with Chloe, experimenting with international recipes, and he played soccer with Ethan in the park. Isabella watched how her children flourished with their father's constant presence. Daniel had started helping at the tech center, teaching younger children. Chloe had started planning special menus to raise funds for the center, and Ethan had appointed Richard as his personal soccer coach. One Sunday afternoon, after closing the restaurant, the five of them were sitting at the small family table, sharing a dinner they had prepared together. "You know what?" Richard said, looking around the table. "This is the first time in my life that I feel truly rich." "But you don't have money anymore," Ethan asked, confused. "I have something much better," he replied, taking Isabella's hand for the first time in months. "I have a family." Isabella felt tears in her eyes, but they were tears of happiness. "Does this mean you're going to be boyfriend and girlfriend again?" Chloe asked with a mischievous smile. Richard looked at Isabella with a silent question in his eyes. "It means we're going to see what happens," she replied. Step by step, day by day. 6 months later, on a rainy December afternoon, Richard appeared at the restaurant with something hidden behind his back. "What do you have there?" Isabella asked, suspicious. "Something I wanted to show everyone." He pulled out some documents and placed them on the table where the four of them were sitting. "It's the deed to a plot of land here, on the outskirts of Los Angeles. It's perfect for building a house, if you want." Isabella took the papers with trembling hands. "Richard, it's not just for us. It also has space to expand the tech center and maybe add a cooking school. Daniel could have his own computer lab. Chloe, her professional kitchen. And Ethan, well, Ethan could have the biggest backyard in all of Los Angeles to play soccer." The children immediately got excited, but Isabella needed to be sure. "Is this a proposal?" "This is a promise," Richard said, taking her hands. "A promise that I want to build something real with you. Not out of obligation, not out of guilt, but because when I'm with you, I'm the best version of myself." Isabella looked at the hopeful faces of her children, then the sincere eyes of the man she had learned to love twice. "All right," she whispered. "Let's build something together." The kiss that followed was interrupted by the children's shouts of joy and the applause of the restaurant's customers, who had been discreetly observing. 3 months later, in a small but perfect ceremony in the restaurant's backyard, Isabella Clark married Richard Sterling. Daniel walked with his mother towards the improvised altar. Chloe was the maid of honor in a dress she had chosen herself, and Ethan carried the rings with the seriousness of someone who understands the importance of the moment. The celebration was exactly what Isabella had always dreamed of. Simple, authentic, surrounded by the people who truly loved them. The children from the tech center had made the decorations. The restaurant's neighbors had brought dishes to share, and the music was provided by a local band that played for free, because true love deserves to be celebrated. When it was time for the vows, Richard didn't just speak to Isabella. "Isabella, I promise to love and respect you every day of my life. I promise to be the partner you deserve and the father our children need. Daniel, Chloe, Ethan, I promise that you will never again doubt my love or my commitment to this family." Isabella, with tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks, replied, "Richard, I promise to give you the opportunity to be the man you want to be. I promise to build the home we always dreamed of with you. And I promise that this time, when the storms come, we will face them together." The rest of the night blurred into a mix of laughter, dancing, and hugs. When everyone finally left, and the family was left alone. Cleaning up, Richard stopped to observe the scene. Isabella putting away the dinner dishes, Daniel helping to fold chairs, Chloe organizing the gifts, and Ethan asleep in a chair with a smile on his face. It was perfect in its imperfection, real in its simplicity. He had finally found the home he had always been looking for, and this time he knew exactly how to protect it. The flavors of true happiness. 2 years after the wedding, the aroma of cinnamon and chocolate wafted through the kitchen of the Heartfelt Flavors Bistro. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, and the Sterling Clark family worked in perfect harmony, preparing the week's special menu. Isabella, now with slightly shorter hair and some gray strands she refused to cover because Richard said they gave her wisdom, supervised, while Chloe, now 16, perfected her new creation. Chicken empanadas, with a French twist she had learned in a summer course. "Mommy, do you think these are ready?" Chloe asked, carefully uncovering the steamer. "Let me taste." Isabella took a small bite, and her eyes lit up. "Perfect. The Culinary Institute of America will be proud to have you next year." Chloe smiled radiantly. She had been accepted into one of the best culinary schools in France, and although pride filled her, she also felt nostalgic about leaving her family. "Are you sure you won't miss me too much?" "We'll miss you every day," Richard interjected, entering the kitchen with Ethan. "But we also know you'll come back an incredible chef." Ethan, now 10 years old, and with a soccer ball perpetually under his arm, approached to hug his sister. "When you come back, you're going to cook for my whole team, right?" "Of course, champ. I'm going to invent a special recipe to celebrate when you win the state championship." Daniel appeared from the main dining area of the restaurant, where he had been installing a new sound system he had programmed himself. Now 18, he had grown so much that he was taller than Richard, but he retained the same intensity in his gaze when talking about technology. "Dad, the system is ready. Now customers can place orders from their tables using the tablets I programmed." "Seriously? Show me." Richard enthusiastically followed him to the dining area. Isabella watched her family scatter around the restaurant, each in their element, and she felt a deep peace she had never experienced before. The place had become much more than a business. It was the heart of their community. The walls were covered with photographs. Daniel's high school graduation with honors, Chloe winning her first local cooking competition, Ethan lifting a soccer trophy, and dozens of pictures of the students from the tech center that Richard had established next to the restaurant. "What are you thinking about?" Richard had quietly returned and was hugging her from behind. "That 3 years ago, I couldn't imagine we could be this happy. Only 3 years. I'd say 20 years ago, I didn't know this happiness was possible." Isabella leaned back against his chest, feeling the solidity of his presence. Richard had kept every one of his promises. He had been present at every school play, every soccer game, every one of Chloe's culinary experiments, and every one of Daniel's programming projects. But more importantly, he had been there in the difficult moments. When Daniel had problems with classmates who mocked him for being the millionaire's son, when Chloe doubted her culinary skills after a failure in a competition, and when Ethan missed his biological parents on special dates. "Do you know what day tomorrow is?" Isabella asked. "The anniversary of when we reconnected at the Crystal Palace Hotel. It's been exactly 3 years, and they've been the best 3 years of my life." Richard turned her to face him. "Well, technically the best have been these last 2 years, as your husband, but those first few months counted too." Isabella laughed. "Even when Daniel wouldn't speak to you and Chloe thought you were a fraud? Especially then, because you showed me that you weren't a family easily impressed. I had to earn your love for real." At that moment, the sound of laughter came from the backyard. Through the window, they could see Daniel teaching basic programming to a group of neighborhood children, while Chloe explained how to make cookies. Ethan directed an improvised soccer game with some of the younger students. "Look at that," Richard pointed out. "Without us realizing it, we raised 3 teachers." "You raised them too," Isabella put her hand on his. "Daniel has your patience for explaining complicated things. Chloe has your determination when she sets her mind to something. Ethan has your ability to make people feel special. Ethan has your generous heart. Chloe has your creativity. Daniel has your strength." They were silent for a moment, watching their children build community in the same natural way they had rebuilt their family. "Do you ever regret it?" Isabella asked. "Leaving everything behind, living so differently from how you used to live?" Richard looked at her with genuine surprise. "Are you asking if I miss having more money than I could spend? Employees who feared me instead of respected me? And an empty life full of things that didn't matter? When you put it like that, it sounds silly." He paused. "Isabella, before I had everything money could buy, but I was completely alone. Now I have a family who loves me, a job that matters, and a community we have helped create together. If I had to choose again, I would make the same decision 1,000 times." Chloe approached from the patio, interrupting the intimate moment. "Mom, Dad, the kids want to know if they can stay for dinner. Their moms already said yes." "Of course," Isabella replied. "How many of us are there?" "About 15, Chloe smiled. "I know what I'm going to cook. My famous chicken fried rice that everyone loves." As Chloe began taking out ingredients, Isabella and Richard exchanged a knowing look. Their family dinners had naturally evolved to include half the neighborhood, and neither of them would have wanted it any other way. Daniel rushed in excitedly. "Dad, Anna got her program to work. She can make the computer draw geometric shapes now. That's incredible. Did you tell her that means she's ready to learn about animations?" "Yes, but she says she wants to finish the program to help her mom with her store's accounting first." Richard smiled with pride. "That girl is going to go far." Ethan burst into the kitchen, sweaty, but happy. "Mom, can we make lemonade for everyone? We're thirsty after the game." "Of course, my love. Who won?" "We tied, but it was fun. Leo says his brother who's in college wants to meet you, Dad. He wants to study programming, too. Tell him to come whenever he wants. There's always room for one more student." As the house filled with the voices and laughter of the neighborhood children, Isabella prepared lemonade with Ethan's help. Richard helped Chloe with dinner while directing the conversation towards the day's programming lessons. Daniel organized a kind of impromptu exhibition where each child showed what they had learned. When everyone finally sat down to dinner, at improvised tables made of planks and sawhorses, because the family table wasn't big enough for 15 people, Isabella observed the scene with astonishment. 3 years ago, she was a single mother struggling to make ends meet, fiercely protecting her children from a world that didn't understand them. Richard was an empty millionaire, engaged to a woman he didn't love, living a life that wasn't his. Now they were the center of an extended family that included not only their 3 children, but dozens of neighborhood kids who considered them teachers, mentors, and second parents. "What are you thinking about?" Daniel asked, noticing her contemplative expression. "That sometimes life gives you exactly what you need, not what you thought you wanted." Richard raised his glass of lemonade. "To second chances." Chloe raised hers. "To the families you choose." Daniel followed. "To finding where you belong." Ethan, not wanting to be left out, solemnly raised his glass, to the best dad in the world and the best mom in the universe. The neighborhood children, not fully understanding the moment but sensing its importance, also raised their glasses, shouting, "Cheers!" in unison, as laughter filled the restaurant and the family they had built together enjoyed another perfectly imperfect dinner. Isabella and Richard exchanged a look that said everything without words. They had found their happy ending, not in a castle or a mansion, but in a modest restaurant filled with love, laughter, and the flavors of true happiness. And when that night, after everyone had gone home and the dishes were washed, they were left alone in the kitchen sharing the last bites of the dessert Chloe had prepared, they knew they had achieved something no amount of money could buy. A life filled with purpose, unconditional love, and the profound satisfaction of having built something beautiful together. Love had triumphed, not because it was easy, but because they had decided it was worth fighting for, and they would continue fighting for it every day. One lovingly cooked dish, one programming lesson, and one family hug at a time. Did this story of true love and second chances move you? This novel demonstrates that true love doesn't always come at the perfect moment, but when it arrives in the right way, it can heal past wounds and build a future full of hope. The transformation of both characters, from pain and distrust to finding peace and authentic love, reminds us that we all deserve a second opportunity to be happy. If this story touched your heart as much as it did ours, don't forget to give this video a like and share it with someone you think needs to hear this message of hope. We want to keep bringing you more stories that touch your heart and make you reflect on love, family, and personal growth. If you enjoyed this content and want to be part of our community, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming novels. We love knowing that we have an international audience, so tell us in the comments, where are you watching us from? Your support motivates us to continue creating quality content that reaches hearts around the world. Thank you for joining us on this beautiful story.